explain more about me in a little bit. If you are here for the daily Deno development talk, this is it. The goal here is really threefold. Does everyone here do Agile and have to like point stories? Does anybody do t-shirt sizing? I've never actually done, I always do Fibonacci or some equivalent number, but for today, the tasks that we've got ahead of us, first one, easy, small thing, just compare Deno and Node. So those of you who are familiar with Node, you should get a good sense of the comparison. Medium level, I'm going to try to persuade some of you, hopefully, via a live demo and some code, to try this because it's very low overhead, because you already know JavaScript. For you React devs, that's the thing React's built on. All right. I'm gonna do a lot of jabs. I'm sorry. Bigger one here. I'm going to try to convince everyone here to call me Legend Dary. Okay. All right. So I think our keynote this morning was like good preface for what I want to do. It's important, I think, when a developer is telling you about something to know where they're coming from. So for me, I grew up in a really rural part of Oregon, in the eastern part of it. What you see here on the far right-hand side is the small building is the one-room schoolhouse that I went to middle school in. The big building on the right is the gym, so that's where we all played. I spent 9 years of my life seasonally working at the summer pool. My first real tech job that I got paid for outside of an educational environment was working on a first of its kind biophysical monitoring project in the Fremont National Forest. It's in Eastern Oregon. And I was tasked with kind of setting up databases and using PHP and setting up the web and the querying structure for that. When I discovered JavaScript and really started loving it, I can attribute that to Jeremy Keith and these two books specifically. Bulletproof Ajax and DOM Scripting by Jeremy Keith, even if you have not read them, they're worth looking at. Jeremy Keith is definitely, like, I would call him a grandfather of JavaScript. If Brendan Eich is the I don't know, patriarch, then Jeremy Keith, to me at least, is definitely a grandpa. Between then and now, I've raised a little bit of a family. I got hired by Red Hat to do web development. I also justified buying a 3D printer to model cookie cutters that I then printed for my wife. I love Blender. And then I also was able to participate in some of our Red Hat's global Red Hat Summit technical demos, and I was able to use an open source game engine called Godot. So I love Blender and Godot are things that I really love to do. They're not web development, but I get to kind of have fun with them. You'll see some of that influence as we go. So the key thing for today to remember is that JavaScript is something that I love. And so I'm even having a Twitter discussion like right now as we speak with a Googler about that very thing. So my daily work, and I'm putting daily in quotes because this particular thing is not my daily work, but at this time of year we start gearing up for the big global Red Hat Summit technical demos, and this is the one we did in earlier in this year. It was a virtual conference, though, so a lot of this was a little different than what we're trying to do now. So we're starting to have these discussions. If you ever want to try this game, it's available. The page, the screenshot that you see here is not. That's part of the server. But you can play our Ship Wars game. It uses AI to play Battleship. Deno was used to create the web component that is using a WebSocket to display the top 10 players in the game telemetry. And then Deno was also serving and kind of doing translation between a server data feed for the thing on the right that it's barely, is about 100 individual games played of Battleship, and Deno is used to translate the data for a web component that then animated that, big wow, ooh, okay. That gave me a chance to learn how to kind of containerize Deno as well, and we'll look at some of that as well. And I got to use Drash, which is not the typical, it's not the typical web server that you would use for Deno. Oak is usually the default, but Drash I wanted to play. My real daily job though at Red Hat is to do Chapeaux, which is my pet project. It's meant to be a digital supply chain for web assets, and the tagline I always say is it's dev tools for the many hats that you wear. The idea here is the components or the widgets that we make are typically web components. They are not, they are web components truly. They're not React components. The second piece of that, as we just deliver those or make them findable, this has not been worked on at all. It is a catalog. It's also based on web standards. RDF, if you're familiar with that, is a graph standard. And it's supposed to help people find assets and track them so that if someone is using the corporate logo on multiple sites, you can tell whether they're serving it from the same spot. And then the CDN, and this one is kind of near and dear to my heart, is that there should be multiple consumption methods. So I'm harping today specifically on the fact that the Node and NPM ecosystem can be a hindrance for non-JS developers. So I work with a lot of middleware people who are Java developers by trade, and the problem with that is that if my answer to them is, we'll go install Node, then at some point they're going to say, I don't want to do that. And then if the only way to consume JavaScript content is through NPM and Node, that's not a selling point for them. So I want to try to make the web back to the way the web used to be, even though it was the wild, wild west. And so Deno has a big selling point for that. So let's talk about Deno. Similar to Node, it's built on V8. So you get the things that you get from V8 in Node, you get from V8 in Deno. Instead of C++, it's built with Rust. That doesn't make any difference to you, unless you're a Rust developer probably. It allows runtimes for both JavaScript and TypeScript. So it treats TypeScript as a first-class language. And we'll talk a little bit about that because there's some nuances with that are important. It has really great built-in utilities that if you've used Go or Rust, a lot of those are contained within the Deno executable. It's secure out of the box, and it also has a great library of standard modules. I've got some screenshots from Twitter because as I follow along with the Deno ecosystem that's developing still, people often refer to it as an alternative to Node, and I want to try to kind of caution people from saying that because you really, what you're doing is you're using a JavaScript runtime, and it doesn't matter what you use. So if you want to use Node, it's fine. You write the JavaScript, and that should be the thing we talk about. It's an alternative JavaScript runtime. It shouldn't be to Node. It should be anything that comes out that's a JavaScript runtime, and that sets the playing field a little bit more level. The TypeScript. Let's talk about these. We're going to go over kind of these things in order, other than the first two. The JavaScript and TypeScript, the TypeScript does add in a transpilation performance hit. So if you want to use TypeScript, there are alternative methods to do TypeScript typing with comments or in other ways. Writing TypeScript is nice, but if you're trying to go for performance, usually you'll avoid that, or do what I've got here is you can avoid the type checking and say no check in your executable run, and that will bypass the type checking. So you're kind of safe to say, if I've run it once, the type checking happened, it's good, and then say no check. Or just write JavaScript or strip out the types. You can also adjust the TypeScript configuration to some degree. There's certain flags in the TS config that don't apply to Deno for obvious reasons because they don't have a corresponding server-side relationship. And then you can also actually do transpilation in runtime using Deno.emit, and I'll show you an example of that too. That's actually kind of fun when you have a web server and you want to serve TypeScript. Just write TypeScript and serve JavaScript out to the browser. So that's what I do. There's more nuanced details about that on the Deno documentation. I did want to call out this Twitter screenshot here is that the TypeScript adding the transpilation should be a consideration. If performance is your thing, TypeScript is not the thing to use, just to be clear, because inevitably you have a transpilation step to get to the browser specifically. Server side, Deno is still not running it natively, it's transpiling it and then running the JavaScript that was developed from that. So just to level set it. I didn't really think about that until recently, but it does, you notice a difference. So the built-in utilities, Deno bundle allows you to take all your dependencies in your source file and bundle them, a la whatever your favorite bundler is these days. Compile allows you to create a standalone executable, which is a really great thing. So it bundles in the Deno core libraries in addition with whatever standard libraries or whatever you're importing, and then outputs a little executable that you can run on anything. That comes into play like if you're doing containerized applications or things like that where it's transportable to whatever platform you're running on. It's a little bit shaky at this point. They're still trying to get some of the stuff worked out on that. Deno coverage allows you to analyze your test coverage. Deno doc will output, you can do either JSON format or just like standard, like just a stream of documentation. And the Deno docs themselves are written like and published using Deno-Doc in the JSON format, and then they have a parser that presents them all. So if you want to see what it looks like in production, that's a good way to see it. Deno format, similar to if you've used Go, it will take, it's a very nice thing if you point it at the right stuff. It surprised me the other day. I didn't put a specific path on it, and it started formatting my markdown files. And I didn't realize it would do that, but it was like, oh yeah, you forgot to put a line break here, or things like that. But it has like JSX, it does a whole bunch of things that you may not expect it to. So if you just say, yeah, take the whole file system and do it, it will format it for sure. Deno install, similar to, it will go grab a package and install it as an executable on your system in the Deno path, assuming you have that access to that. Deno lint, similar to any linter that you are using now, it will throw out errors if there's formatting problems or style problems. REPL, you can run it just like Node. It doesn't, I think there's a little bit of a nuance that the TypeScript side of things doesn't work quite the same in REPL as it does in just static files. Deno run is how you run the scripts. Deno test is a built-in test runner. And Deno upgrade is the version mechanism to upgrade and downgrade. Kitson, take his with a grain of salt because he's on the dev team for Deno, but you know, when someone says, oh yeah, I really wish Node had XXX, you know, whatever feature it is, usually the Deno response is, oh yeah, Deno already does that. Deno test, for people who are test concerned, is a nice feature also. So CLI flags, as you're using Deno executable, some command, and then these flags, I'm not going to go over all of them. Deno is secure by default, so you don't get anything out of the box except the ability to run the script and download dependencies without any of these flags. So that can be a pain for some people who are used to being able to have the keys to the kingdom with Node. In this case, if you want access to environment variables or network access, file read, file write, you have to ask specifically for them. And where I haven't listed the no allow list, you can set those very granularly to specific files or folders, so that if you, or for environment variables, specific values, so that you can be very granular with that. So from an enterprise perspective, this to me is a game changer over what you get from Node. Huge wins for security here. On the bottom there, it's decentralized, so package management is not in the black box or the magic of Node modules, or what we get with Node. We also don't get a post install, so there's no security risk of that where you have side effects from the scripts that you execute. If you're a big HTTP 203 watcher like I am, they have a little episode where they talk about it. The standard modules, they're pretty big. There's HTTP, crypto, and you know what? Let's just have a look. So in here, you can see these are all the standard modules. These are, as they say, they are reviewed by the Deno core team. They're meant to be used without dependencies. So they're built on the core Deno runtime, and then that's it. You don't need to add anything else to it. That being said, and what this should tell you is, if you want to build these types of things with the Deno core runtime, you absolutely can, and we'll look at that, especially things like HTTP serving. Let's go back here. So that's kind of the Deno landscape as it exists. If you get started, let's talk about what it looks like from a day-to-day perspective. I had a discussion with Axel this week actually about dependencies. There are similar concepts to what you would know from Node, but they're a little bit different. So where you have packaged JSON, which is your end-all be-all of how you structure your Node packages, Deno doesn't have that. As a non-standard, unofficial recommendation, they talk about deps.ts. What that does is you would import all of your dependencies into that file and then export them out in the same breath. That allows you centralized dependencies, but also it's just a mechanism to do it. There's no black box, there's no requirement. You can name the file whatever you want. It's just the same way that the browser loads dependencies. You import them, you export them. I'm having a discussion right now about whether or not this is good with Justin Fagnani from Google, but as of yet, I don't have any reason not to say that. Package lock. So when you want to make sure that you have the same packages, you can run Deno with a -- lock flag and set a file for it to be the lock file, and then the cached dependencies that it downloads are set. It will throw errors if they're not the same. And then the equivalent of Node modules so if you're running in production, and I'll be honest, I don't even think about this stuff because everything's containerized and other people handle it, but if you're checking in your Node modules for production so that you get the same packages in production that you're expecting, Deno cache is the same equivalent to that. Deno cache is not required or necessary for anything else. So if you're running in production, though, it's a good way to keep your stuff in order. The one thing that you have to consider, though, is the benefit you get of packaged JSON is that you can hone in on specific versions or version families. With Deno, because you're in the wild, wild west and you're running on the frontier of everything, there isn't a mechanism for that built into Deno. You would use something like a CDN that has version built into it. Skypack is one that's very Deno friendly. It has the type definitions, type declaration files. There's a flag you can put on there so that Deno is sensible when it imports them. And you get version, theoretically version static URLs. Let's talk about the cloud story with this. Deno, the company has branched off into a corporate entity, and also then the people that are working on the actual Deno core library. Deno.com/deploy is their serverless equivalent. We'll take a look at that as we go. And Node, I think I don't want to list all the vendors that provide Node, because I think pretty much everybody has that as a thing you can do. But they're essentially if we're doing plus minus comparison right now, obviously no one has Deno in the cloud except Deno. But hopefully that story will change over time. We're going to look at, so you can use Deno. They have an official Docker image now. I had started, before they had an official one, I started building images, and we can look at those. And we'll use my Deno image in a bit at the demo. For versioning, as far as keeping track of your Deno version, Deno upgrade is the mechanism to do that. It's a little bit different than NPM in Node, because you don't have the same mechanism to cache a version and then reuse it. Honestly, if you have a fast internet connection, this is not really that big of a hit performance-wise. So if you need to switch versions, you can run Deno upgrade and then give it a version. My personal, my daily usage, I pretty much, if I see an update come out, I just upgrade. Because usually right now, the cadence that they're going is pretty fast, and they're adding, new features and new little bells and whistles that I really like. So I've been upgrading without any real concern. Nothing they've done has broken anything that's been critical to what I do, but obviously, being able to hone in on a specific version with the upgrade is a nice thing to do. It does overwrite the existing version. This one, to me, as a front-end developer, is probably the biggest selling point. And I know I'm going to get flack for saying use the platform as much as I do, but as I mentioned, the JavaScript to me, and the pure JavaScript, not what Node gives, even Deno to some extent, this is not strictly pure. But Deno sticks to the web APIs a lot closer than Node does. So this is my little jab here. Deno has fetch. Deno has events built in. So how many people are front-end developers in here? Okay. Does everyone use add event listener or know how to use it? If you know how to use it, Deno has it, and you can use it on the server side. And I'll show you, we'll look at and see how that works. Broadcast channel is one I'm not real familiar with, but in Deno land, it allows you to communicate between disparate nodes on the edge. URL pattern, anyone familiar with that? This standard the API was just released within the last month or two, I think. It's a way of parsing URLs, and Deno is moving fast on new web APIs, and that's a big deal. Web storage, so local storage is built into Deno. It has a concept of local storage that you can use. So if you do that, you can do what you need to. Web workers, same thing. And location is kind of built into the local storage as well. Node, it's not that you can't do these things, I'll say that, but they are not built in. And it makes a difference in the code that you're generating because of dependencies. And everything I do, I've been trying to reduce dependencies, because I think when I talk about JavaScript development to people that are not JavaScript developers, that story of just go install Node to then use the stuff always bothers me. So if I said, no, this works on the browser, oh yeah, and if you want to run Deno, you can run it there too. All right. I went through those really fast because the demos are a little iffy here. I probably need to exit full screen. There we go. All right, so what we're gonna do, so this is Deno code, all right? It should look a lot like JavaScript. That's probably too big. All right, so let's show, I'm gonna leave this here. So what this is doing, let's drop it down just a little bit high. All right. So what we're going to build up to is some type of group system. So you're all my users, and I want users to be able to have the ability to send a message to my server and for the server to distribute that message back out. So if I'm talking about class development, I have a user, fairly straightforward. The user's gonna have a socket connection of some kind, and then I'm gonna generate some type of ID for the user using the built-in web crypto. That hopefully, if you recognize that. If you haven't used web crypto, get random values allows you to just generate random values. And then I'm converting them into hex so that I get a single string. It gives you an array of integers. That's what it gets out. And then this stuff handles the WebSocket. Deno's built-in listen, so this is part of the core library. Deno listen allows you to open up a listener on a port, and then using top-level await, which is another nice thing to have. You can await the listener's connections, so every connection causes it to spawn a new dispatch here. And then the dispatch, all I'm doing is I'm handling the requests with a serve HTTP, which is obviously an HTTP server that's also noticed built into Deno. I don't have any, we'll just go up here real quick. No imports, to make sure that everyone is very clear on that. I don't know why I did URL here. I was gonna start doing URL parser, that's why. But we won't worry about that. So serve HTTP allows me to handle the connection. The good news is Deno also has in the standard library a listen and serve that reduces the amount of overhead that this is doing even. The standard library is obviously an import. It's not built into the Deno system. But the connection's handled based on the request method. I'm gonna respond. I just put a switch case for get in this case, so that if the get happens and it's asking for an upgrade, then I'll upgrade it to a WebSocket. Notice also, upgrade WebSocket built into the Deno core. And then I instantiate a new user, add it to my user set, user map, and then handle the on open and on message, and then respond. And so the browser knows what to do with WebSocket requests, or the server knows what to do with WebSocket requests, and then I could have put this in another file and parsed it, and that would have been fun, but it's a little more fun for me to show another feature of Deno's command line so this is all the HTML, I just kind of plopped this in, and we can see how this works. So let's go here. So what we're going to be concerned with is this get method first. So it's opening up a listener. So if I am in, let's change it to this one. If I'm in this directory and I say Deno run, and I have my WS server JS file, it's a JS file. I could put TS and add types in and all that. For purposes of demo, let's just avoid it. It will parse the JavaScript and look for anything that might be wrong, and I get an error. So remember, it's secure by default. I didn't ask for permission to use the network, so I don't get access to the network. And that's permission denied, right? And it gives you some sensible error messages as far as the permissions go. Allow net is what we want. And so if I do the same command and allow net, and the allow net also, as I mentioned, some of the flags have, I can say what specific port to run, I can hone in on that. I'm just gonna leave those off. So if I say allow net, that would give it to me. The other nice one, if you're doing development, is you can just run with prompt. And what that'll do is say, anytime I need a new permission, do you want to allow it? So you can go in and say, oh yeah, I do. All right. So now, and I didn't put any good error, like notifications here, but now this is running. All right. And if we look at this, it's dumping out. I've got a WebSocket connection. We'll go ahead and reload here. And so you can see I've got a WebSocket connection to localhost running through Deno, not with no dependencies, okay? That's okay, that's all right, all right? Is anyone wowed by that at all? No? Okay, we'll keep moving. So for development purposes, so like for my daily use, another thing I use frequently is, so I'm gonna leave prompt on and I'm gonna add another flag called watch. How many people here use live reloading? Okay. How many people here have built their own live reloader to do the live reloading? I like that. I like your moxie, soldier. All right. So if I do watch, it's gonna watch specifically this file that I'm running, still get my prompt, and I still am gonna get the same thing, but now, let's see if we can split screen this here a little bit. We'll get rid of that. All right. So now if let's say I wanted to change the background, and this is why I picked this, the color. All right, so let's do a little bit lighter here. And I save this, you'll see it asks for permission again. So it's reloading the file because there was an update. And then if I go here, give it a minute, pop, there you go. So the live reload, like this is out of the box. So essentially the WebSocket has a thing that says if the WebSocket closes, just refresh the page. Interestingly enough, there's like that weird lag point where the server goes down and it says, yeah, I'm gonna refresh, but the server hasn't come back up. It's fine, everything's fine. So that's essentially, I've built in live reloading for a web project without any other dependencies, but I can also manage that myself. And that, if I was going to say one thing that's a big selling point of Deno for me, it's that where I can, with Node and the Node NPM ecosystem, I can go grab a new library to do all this stuff for me and use it. But what ends up happening is, and maybe I'm the only person that has this, I get so many new libraries and frameworks coming in as dependencies that have all their own little niche syntax that my brain just overloads. At some point, like if I'm building up things, and so the less of that I can do, the better off I feel about development. All right, so that's what we're gonna be building that. I wanna show some other examples of ways that you can use Deno and try it out. One, I would be remiss, I work for Red Hat. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our really nice free thing that you can go get. If you sign up for a developer program account, you have access to this developer sandbox, which is an OpenShift environment to play with, how many people here use Kubernetes in some way? Okay, so how many people here use OpenShift? Yeah, I didn't think so. All right, me neither. But if you want to learn OpenShift and have a cloud environment to play with for free, did I say free? I said free. This is a really great place to do it because you get roughly what you would need to have a little bit of fun with it. You obviously, there are restrictions on what you can do with it. You can't create your own operators for one. So if that was like your thing you really wanted to do, just don't. But for my purposes, any web stuff I want to do, it's brainless to get started. So as an example here, if I wanted to add, So I talked about the catalog using RDF, graph store, data store. So if I wanted to build up my choice du jour is Oxygraph, which is written in Rust. I can build this up, and there's a few little things you have to set up to get to the point. If you know Kubernetes, this is essentially setting up Kubernetes deployments. Let's see, there's one other. We'll do it later. All right. False alarm. Take that off. Oh, I already did it. That's why. Okay. So anyway, you can host whatever you want. So if you want a database, there's also, you can add from the catalog. If you need a database, you can grab a MongoDB or whatever you want, and have access to that in your environment. The thing that I want to show that's like my favorite thing is code-ready workspaces. And how many of you have used Visual Studio, the new web-based one? So Visual Studio Code has a web-based thing. GitHub has their I always forget what it's called. It's called Code Spaces. It's funny because they came out with this right after we did code-ready workspaces, and it's I wonder if the branding team knew about that. So if you click on Dev Sandbox, what you get is, how many people remember Code Envy? Nobody. All right, perfect. So Code Envy back in 2013, I put on a conference and had the CEO talk about it. It was a cloud-based IDE, first of its kind. And this is a few iterations later after Red Hat purchased Code Envy, what came out of it. So what you get is you get a live IDE with cloud control built in. So in cooking fashion here, I'm gonna pull up a dev file that I already know works, kind of. Let's see here. So you could do this. The Chapeaux web component repo has a dev file, and so this is the mechanism that Code-Ready Workspaces uses to generate environments. And so if I want to create a new one, I can just say custom workspace, paste this in. So if you want to try Deno in this environment, this is an easy way to do it. You can load that dev file, and then we can point it at a different repo right here. I'm probably spelling that wrong. No, that's right. So if I point at a repo, it's going to download it, but it's also bootstrapping all this stuff. So the container image has built into it a Deno that runs persistently, and then you can use that in Code-Ready Workspaces, and I built in the commands already, and I probably need to tweak some of them, but the idea here is you can run a script called bundle, you can run a script called server, and we can change that to WS server, because that's what we're going to be using. And then this one is going to be Chapeaux. So you can just kind of, and none of this will matter, really. You could leave these directories the same way, but we will go ahead and update them. And then when we get this going, it does take, because it's spinning up containers and downloading a bunch of dependencies, we're going to do something else while it loads. But once you allow all that stuff to download, the environment itself actually is persistent. So you can see on the left there, I've got one that I already set up. But yeah, so once I do this, so I say, yeah, load the dev file, it's gonna load it. And then I say create and open. And what it's doing behind the scenes, you can see the logs too if you're real interested in that. Is it's spinning up containers to have the code-ready workspaces environment. So it's the IDE. It runs on an open source project called Thea. If you're familiar with that, it's also what VS Code is built off of. And so it's going to build that out. While it's doing that, I want to show also, let's look at Deno deploy. And this is where you guys get to have a little fun with this. All right, so I've already signed up. If you sign up, you get something equivalent to this with nothing in it. We're going to go ahead and create a new project. We'll call it ConnectTech. That sounds great. All right. Oh, sorry, I meant playground. I did the wrong thing. The projects are GitHub repos, so you can point them to your repo. New playground, I did the wrong thing here. We'll see if I can call it what I want. Oh, it's locked, all right. So I can't name it whatever I want, but that's all right. So new playgrounds are like instant win type things. If you have a device that connects to the internet, now would be the time to prepare it. We'll see how this goes. All right, so if I open the playground, it gives me a default thing. You can see the URL here, maybe. Let's increase the size of that. All right. Can everybody see that in the back? So this is Deno running in the cloud. It's essentially serverless, running a function. Now, anyone want to take any bets on whether this is going to work? All right, so this worked locally. All right, the one thing I need to change is here. It is a HTTPS, so I need a secure socket, and I need to pull this URL in. All right. And since it's running not on a port, all right. What do you think could go wrong with this? What's the thing that went wrong when I did it? The security, right? So there is no security built into this because what do you think they did on the back end to make it work? Anyone have a guess? I know most of the talks have not been interactive, but so they do prompt and they make sure that their prompt is only allowing for certain things. So if it says, all right, I need net access, they say, yes, I'm willing to give you net access to whatever you want. So on their server, they don't have to worry whether I do something nefarious here. They said, yeah, we're okay with this script doing this one thing. Same, I think they have certain restrictions that you can do and can't do. This one only needs net access, all right? All right, so this is the true test here. Although I know the anticipation is killing you, right? All right, so there's the editor. And I forgot to take out something, so it may or may not work here. Yeah, we may get it. There's a VS Code plugin for Deno that I've been trying to get into this editor, and the versions don't match up. So this may not work in the way that it is, but it's not necessary for the demo. But I will fix that before anyone hopefully tries this. All right, so let's go back to our test here. That's local. Where Deno? Somewhere here. No. There it is. Okay. Oh, the Deno logo. I guess I should have seen that. All right, so if I hit save and deploy, this will take my code and run Deno, right? All right, let's find out. All right, so here is your challenge. Go to that URL, and I have 2 prizes. One of them is a book on Deno web development.
I think I left it in ballroom C because I thought that's where I was giving my talk. But I will get that for one person. And then the other one is if you're interested in Godot development, you can decline this or not, but there's a Kickstarter out, and I'll take your contact information and send you a link to when it's released. There's a Godot Kickstarter for helping to learn how to code using Godot that would give you access to it. All right, so now, does everyone see these entries on your browser? All right. Okay, so now cheat the system now and reload it. You don't see them anymore, do you? Like, oh shoot, you guys ruined it. Horrible. Now, so here, this is the nice reveal and something to hopefully put the nail in the coffin of Node for you. Not really. So one of the things you can do with Deno, and because I did this in the way that I did, is Node's HTTP implementation has a very strict definition of what methods are allowed. And it's essentially an array, or like a named object that has the exact things that are allowed. If you notice on the bottom here, I have a case that says, all right, if the method is CPX, then I'm going to send you back the users. And so, let's see, I'll pull this out. How about that? We'll make this big. So, if you're on the browser and you want to fetch a URL, all right, you do that, right? Everyone know that? And then if I want to do a different method, I do this, all right? And then I'm just going to treat this in the way that I normally do. I get a response back. I want the response JSON. And then I want to see what the data says. Yeah, I know all of you are cheating. Multiple entries, huh? It's like you guys are web developers. Congratulations. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm getting distracted by all the duplicates. All right. All right, so now if I were to turn the server off, that'd be a problem, but I can also, so in this case, I can get at this data by way of this call. And so in this case, you've upped your chances of winning, obviously, by putting multiple entries in. Someone want to give me a wide berth of what? All right, let's see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, let's see, my favorite number is 24. We'll do this. All right, 24. All right, what do we get? Oh, I got it. Where am I? Not log. I did too many. All right. All right, that's our winner right there. Let's see who that is. All right, so now I can go back. You're going to love this. All right. Mario Lopez? Is it? Oh. Looks like Saved by the Bell fans. That's my favorite. That's all right. That's a good name. All right. Let's do, yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to, let's see. I was hoping it would just show up when I hovered over it. Normally. Oh, I forgot. You sent me 4,000? Did you script them? Nice. All right, we've already got our winner. Let's find it. All right. Let's do this. Who am I kidding? All right, who's Tampensis? Winner, web development in Deno. Easy, random way. So hopefully that convinces at least some of you to go try it. Deno deploy is a really great way. If you don't want to go full bore OpenShift, I understand. Deno deploy is definitely a really quick way to get started. Installing it, there's just a curl script to install it. If you don't want to do it on your own local, use Deno deploy. I'd be happy to take some questions. I think we have a little bit of time. Any questions?
Yeah. So like open source libraries like on the NPM, we get like random vulnerabilities that can go here and there. How do you see that, if it's possible, like coming into Deno land? Is that going to be like mitigated?
I mean, I think the idea would be there's still like that little, like if you do the generic, like give them net access, yeah. But if you're an enterprise grade developer, you're saying, I'm going to give you access on this port, and potentially, I don't know if they've got protocol level types of things, but in your code you can, right? You can eliminate any ability of your script to be able to do that. So if any dependencies are doing it, your script's going to error. It's going to be like you're requesting things that aren't allowed. I think where Node has failed is like post-install especially. It's like, hey, go ahead and run arbitrary code after you get done. That type of attitude is not built into Deno, where Node, you kind of get that because the ecosystem is the way it is, you're going to continue to get that type of stuff. I think there is, I think what we will see is as people, and I'm having a discussion about this, as people balk at the black box that NPM and Node are, I think we will start to see people moving back towards the browser style, where maybe we centralize our dependencies in a script in the way that deps.ts does. And then you have canonical, like, yeah, you want the lit library, you want React, it's at react.dev/react.js. And then it's like, load that. Like the authority that they have, it's canonical, whatever version, at whatever version. I feel like that's the way the industry's moving. I'm like the old get off my porch guy, but like I feel like the mental overhead that a lot of people that are not JS devs have trying to deal with JS, there's more, I think there are more of them than there are of us, even though certain things would say otherwise probably, Stack Overflow. I think JavaScript is always like top, but how many of those are also down below? So I think as far as security vectors, I think the landscape for it is very minimal. I think it would be more of a, yeah, it's right now, like I'm loading things from unpackage to load NPM scripts. Like I'm still digging myself a hole there, because it's like, yeah, I don't know what I'm getting, but at the same time, if it were to request something that's not allowed, I'm gonna know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure you can probably talk to White Source too, like about this whole thing. But yeah, it's going to be like verified sources for this library.
Yeah, and I don't want to go all Web3 and all that, but like that's really what we're looking at. Like decentralized stuff makes a lot more sense, and NPM is a black box to a lot of people. Any other questions, Deno or otherwise? I do have stickers for Chapeaux as well. I think there's some out on the table. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Chapeaux and the monetization?
So the joke on everyone is there's not really anything to monetize, because right now I don't have, the web components are the only thing I have that's worked on. The idea, and I work for Red Hat, so it'll just be open source. at this point. Like my goal would be to have it develop enough to get productized into Red Hat. But the idea would be self-hosted catalog. Like, I mean, I talk with enough people in education where and I mean, we face this problem too, and everyone probably does. The idea is it's not strictly to be web components, it's web assets. So if you had JavaScript or React or whatever it is, I don't care. But being able to have that canonical source internally and be able to manage it is a big deal that most people haven't had a solved problem. Like, that's an unsolved problem internally. Like, we have like four groups around Red Hat doing web component, and they all have their own like library that they're making. And all of us didn't know each other existed until just recently, and like they're all very mature. And so like that type of thing, like having a centralized and self-hosted, because for a lot of enterprises, it's not, you can't just willy-nilly go out and throw things out on NPM or anything like that. But watch the repos, and if you're interested in it, just I have a Twitter feed that I try to post stuff on, but hopefully I will get more time to work on that stuff. The components are more internal, like they're driven by stakeholders. So, but if you're interested in it, I'd love to get in touch with you. All right, I think we're about. We have 4 more minutes. If you have any questions, then we'll call it. And if you'd like to come up afterwards, and I'll get you a book. Or if you want to go down to Ballroom C, it's probably sitting on the stand in there. Thank you all for your time. Oh yeah, do you have a question? Oh, okay, yeah, thank you.